So you've met Terry, Harold, and Christopher. So Tony, if you just introduce yourself to the audience in case there's anybody new.
Hi everyone, I'm Tony Jamous, was the co-founder and CEO of Nexmo, which is a communication platform service. Today I'm an independent consultant and investor.
Excellent, thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the audience from the presentations that were given? I'll open with that and I'll come back again. Okay, so I'm going to hit off with the first question. As Terry mentioned, with Twilio, they now are at $1 billion run rate. They like to quote run rate than absolute revenues, you know. BABS as always. So, but they have built out their own platform. They've built out a ton of developer tools that meet a whole range of different developer needs and constituencies. And even though the platform is supposed to sell itself, they have a massive sales force, just handling all the inbound leads they get. So I'm interested on each of the panelists' views on should we just give up trying to catch up with Twilio and let them dominate and overcharge? Who wants to kick that one off? Could you into the mic? No. Wait. Christopher, go for it, but into the mic, so because we were streaming on the internet.
I mean, Twilio is completely out of touch with reality when it comes to pricing. Like their main providers even fired them as a start a company. Pricing doesn't. Their pricing doesn't match what you have to compete in the environment. In my opinion, it works with developers trying to start something up because it doesn't know anything better. There's a point where that scale just breaks. It's not for wholesale.
Anybody else on the panel?
Well, I think that everybody is competing with them, right? I mean that's today the name of the game is in the communication platform as a service market is to close the gap with Twilio. So everybody is putting their APIs out there, trying to rebrand themselves as a developer company, and trying to compete on price. So they're gonna feel the heat. I mean, Twilio is feeling the heat, especially when it comes to high volume, big revenue customers that are looking to add multi-vendor relationships. That being said, what makes Twilio unique is not their products and is not their platform, is their brand and their $100 million+ they invest in their brand and customer acquisition on a yearly basis. And if you don't have that amount of money and expertise to build a strong brand, then there's really no point to compete with them on that level. So you end up competing on price. There's another way of looking at the market as well, is can you compete with them on solving the customer problem but differently, maybe through other means, non-API means. I think that's an interesting topic to discuss as well.
Excellent, Tony. Harold.
Yep, I'm down that vein as well. There's plenty of meat on the bone because of their pricing and the fact that they aren't staying in touch with it. They've got, as far as they're concerned, the world wrapped up and around their finger, and it looks like that. But at the end of the day, some of the smaller guys that are out there, they are getting those niche markets where they're coming in and starting snapping at the bottom and starting to pull some of those bigger customers, because now they're kind of giving that white glove treatment. So instead of you being a customer and you're just cha-ching, you actually become an advocate with them. So you can build your brand by, again, as we heard this morning from Terry, myself, and others, and especially Chris, it's all about your employees and how you interact with your customers. And if you can add that value to it, then that'll take you over the top, and you'll be able to get your chunk of the bone of CPaaS. There's plenty out there.
Yeah, because I really enjoyed the similarities between what Christopher was saying and how he's building his customer companies, and some of the simple advice that you were providing. So it's again coming to partnering and building that customer relationship. Terry.
Yeah, I think Twilio has been very successful. Very few companies in the public market can grow at 80%. So if you look at that, it's incredible. Tony's absolutely right. The brand they have built has a very large lead over the rest of the market. Now, having said that, the market is huge. The growth is huge. So there's many ways to slice the bread. A couple examples. One was what we talked about is a private cloud implementation. The other one we talk about is, for example, I'll use this analogy, right? If you want to go to the Twilio party, you have to go through their front door. You have to use the Twilio portal with their APIs and everything else. Now, our strategy on the distribution is a little different. If you want to come to the Kaleyra party, I don't care if you slip down through the chimney, jump through the windows, crawl from the basement. I don't really care, right? What that means is we're happy to be the platform behind other people's brand. If you're an email company that competes with SendGrid, for example, we're happy to provide the CPaaS capabilities for any of your customers, right? Twilio is never going to do that. And if you think about it, any SendGrid customers providing email services, any of them starts using CPaaS, they're going to lose that customer. They're going to lose it to Twilio. And Twilio has all the pricing powers. This is kind of like the old Cineverse story where they provide so many things on telecom, they would just like give you this SMS for free so that, they can get the 911 service or whatever the case might be. And Twilio has the capability to do that. So I think, again, there's many ways to choose your market. And this is what I think is the most important thing as entrepreneurs is look at our target market and have a strategy for that. Because otherwise, if you're always thinking about in terms of catching up with somebody else, that's normally a losing game, right? We say, if you can't beat them with their rules, well, they'll change your rules.
Exactly, and that's a great point. And it actually points back to one of the reasons why Harold mentioned he joined VoIP Innovations, because they had the showroom, so they were making it very easy for people to consume the applications, the basically solutions to business problems. So that's great. Again, just looking at the audience, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask, okay? Let's move on then to the next question, which is, and I mentioned it in the first, which is just the diversity of, let's use the word customer needs when we're talking about CPaaS, because it is very diverse. I mean, it's a telecom app server, and then basically you've got a whole range of wrap of services and capabilities around it, but it serves many different constituencies. From, Terry, you gave the example of Uber with the anonymous calling, through to American Airlines as a tool for a large brand to basically re-engage. I've seen, for example, Deutsche Telekom do exactly that same process for engaging some of the large banks in Germany with a focus on private in terms of hosted solutions where everything is kept within Germany, and you even knew the address where the data was being kept. Because again, you've got a whole host of regulatory and compliance issues there. So you mentioned, yes, focus, change the game, but where's the opportunity? Given it's not just CPaaS Twilio does, it's doing all the email stuff, it's within its ecosystem, it's got a whole host of enterprise communications, it's now basically got, 80, 95%, depending on who you talk to, a contact center solution out there. So it's sort of across the programmable telecom space, it's pretty broad coverage. So where, given that coverage, and its brand dominance, are the opportunities?
I think you find the opportunity of trying, going through your own stuff, like in the middle of something, you're going to have an inspiration that's going to show you something. This makes sense. Like, example, some of the things that we made a long time ago with SMS, like we took the Mojave phone booth. Where with that phone booth in the middle of the desert, the Mojave Desert, I had a phone number. Long story short, we ended up getting a number and we turned it into a conference center. And we also turned it into like an IRC thing where you could text message it, subscribe your nickname, and it responds back. And then now you're inside this group of channels and you can communicate with people. And we did it for the DEF CON conference. But it was so people could communicate from a way of like having their own personal numbers, bypassing mobile carrier filters, but the way that we were routing, so that we could have this type of communication. And then that, we ended up taking that and putting that into another reiteration of that, like years later, into our Zip 911 product. Because like, you find certain things that are useful, and then it just clicks, oh, well, actually regular everyday people can use this for something that's beneficial. So you just kind of have to find those like aha moments, like this makes sense, and let's just do that. Like a inspiration, like a moment of inspiration, of clarity of putting.
Exactly, being out there and basically, partly how we run Tad Hack. It's just think about the problems. As soon as you see the problem, because we're all telecom geeks, you sort of go, you know what? There's a technology we can use for that. That's a good point. Harold?
Yeah, so Cisco did a crazy thing back in the day as they were introducing their Spark board and really the WebEx teams and how it collaborated. So when you look at what they did, they set up these big boards, one in Beijing, one kind of in, it might have been Chicago, but definitely in LA. And they let people see people and talk through people. And it's those kind of gestalt moments that you don't know where it's going or what they're doing and the gestures there. The same thing that they did where they provided these to hospitals now so that famous stars and things can reach out and talk to a group of children and stuff. It's really looking at that give back part. I don't think I've seen a report anywhere where Twilio's done anything like that. So if you think about it, as you add that part to your project and those things, I mean, back in the day at Voxeo Labs, Tropo, we actually did the Mobile Disaster Center where we'd come out and stand up a tower just for the heck of it. Jonathan Taylor, one of the owners of it, really enjoyed doing that. So think about those pieces too, because that really, really does add value if you look at the community side.
Exactly, that's an excellent point. So again, sorry, Tony.
Yeah, I just want to add here, I think one of the opportunities is to solve the same problem differently. So essentially, it is crazy in 2019 to go talk to decision makers, CEOs and CMOs and tell them, in order for you to modernize the way you engage with your customers, here's a bunch of APIs, you need to go hire developers and build it. And the more I talk to customers, the more I realize actually their developers don't want to do this. They don't want to deal with building the way they interact with their customers. It's not their expertise. They don't like to do it. I mean, they want to really empower the product folks and the marketing folks to do that. And in many instances, the code of that interaction is actually embedded into some code repository somewhere, and the CMO, the CEO can't really visualize the way this flow is happening. So that's a problem. That's a business opportunity that Twilio is recognizing and is trying to address. But I think that there's much different ways of addressing it than through APIs and developer community.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we saw with Dinesh yesterday in how he creates these simple wizards to make it easy for product owners, marketing, sort of customer relationship managers to be able to create very simple applications using SMS to engage without needing to go through the whole stack and development stack to create something. Perry, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the ecosystem from the market perspective, I'm going to bring up Dinesh's product as well, because if you think about it, like my parking meter example, not every city wants to hire a fleet of developers to create that solution. So if they could actually just go on some interface and configure it, there's no reason that they couldn't put that into deployment very quickly. So that's obviously a great opportunity of some sort of, the old days we call them system integrators or whatever, some middleware that take the CPaaS applications and be able to deploy them in the marketplace. The other opportunity that people probably don't think about is more intelligence and capabilities at the mobile operator side. Some of these, right now, if you receive, for example, a call from the Uber driver, you have no idea it's the Uber driver. There's no reason that the carrier couldn't tell you what's going on, right? Anti-spam is a big problem, and this is what initiated the Twilio petition that Eric talked about yesterday, that they wanted SMS to be regulated because the operators right now just don't have a very good ways to distinguish spam versus valid traffic. If you put, it's kind of funny, right? Like, because some of the SMS reply, if you reply stop, and you have the word stop in it, they think you want to stop you want to stop the opt-in, and you want to opt out. But lots of messages could start with stop, like, hey, stop by to pick me up or something, and they think you're opting out. So things of that nature, that the networks need to be more intelligent as well.
I think that's a great point, Terry, you're making. I think the challenge of Twilio and other providers in that case is they are too telco. The telco industry didn't make it easy for them to create that abstraction layer. And let's say if we have developers here in the audience, like, they don't understand why they need to go and buy shortcode in the US and respect, different regulation for different carriers, and trying to understand how to design their code to avoid being caught in a filter of a carrier. Like, this is insane. So I think the next phase in this industry is really to abstract that and maybe, I hope, cut out the carrier altogether. I mean, we are at the WebRTC conference. So I think time has come for the telco infrastructure to get away from not becoming an obstacle anymore to build great customer engagement applications.
That was so below the belt to be calling Twilio to telco, but it was beautiful.
Well, I think a start was the word SIP, and now it's a data baby.
But then, that raises the interesting question in terms of, bypass. So, because it is, and it's not just in North America. I mean, North America is particularly peculiar, but around the world, there are so many different rules, and it changes from carrier to carrier. That's why there's this great hope that, Line has it locked down. They have a great A2P platform, but it's all contained within the Line ecosystem. WhatsApp, of course, is trying to do something more open, but that's part of an evil organization that spies on people. And really, let's face it, throughout their history has struggled to deal with developers. Here you go, build on this. Oh, sorry, it's gone away now. Although, because again, Bay Area monopolies, they do these sort of things. So, we have SMS. It's the lowest common denominator. With all the trials and tribulations. Bypass still looks tough. So do we just wait and just do omni-channel and hope something happens? What's the way forward with respect to messaging?
I'm going to take a stab at it. We talked a lot about the RCS problem yesterday. I think it would be great because if you look at the ecosystem, right now it doesn't work if you're a brand or if you're enterprise. And you say, okay, I want to make my content or application once and be able to do all the endpoint. It wouldn't work like that today. So I would actually think it would be great if the industry can adopt something like what I would call a pseudo RCS, meaning everybody should be able to create the same content. And then I don't really care if you're delivering over WhatsApp or Facebook or Line or SMS or whatever. It will show up the way it's meant to. But the point is, on the creation or on the developer or on the enterprise brand side, they only have to do it once, and then it's the same format. So I don't know if there's a way how the industry get to that point, but that would be a great outcome.
Now, just Terry, on that point, is that, in your thinking, a federated model or an aggregated model?
Well, it's not even aggregated. My point is that if you look at the content side, the problem right now is you cannot create the same content and deliver it over all these different channels.
SMS.
Right, unless it's SMS and up. So my point is take it to a pseudo RCS and everybody agree that's a standard, and then you create the content once, and you don't really care how it gets delivered.
Understood.
The end device is going to show up. If it's Facebook take it and deliver it, whatever, how they do it. But the content it's created once in the same way.
Okay, just hang a sec. We said the RCS word. Oh, just hang a sec. It's not on. Just switch it on.
So that's basically like MIME for email, where you can have whatever email client you like, but that you within reasonable boundaries, your content, email content will render anywhere. All right, it's text or HTML. But so essentially it's basically having a lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that makes sense for messaging inherently. Yeah, because you have inherent differences between all messaging, and in fact you're incentivized as a messaging application developer to create unique features so that there is ideally no common denominator goes across them. A good example being Snapchat with ephemerality. Do you have ephemerality as one of your one of your lowest common denominator features? What about encryption as well? So there's various sort of mutually exclusive features which probably mean you can't get to lowest common denominator.
Any comments to that? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally valid comment, and I think there's no doubt that the world is moving towards more and more channels, messaging channels, and diversification of the feature of each channel. You mentioned Snapchat. WhatsApp has lots of regulation around it, and Apple iMessage, business chat also has its own regulation. I mean, not to mention the SMS, different regulation by country. I mean, I think the world is going into more and more diversity of channels, and companies actually like Nexmo has developed APIs that create maybe first version of this abstraction layer. It's called the dispatch messaging API, where you send a message and it gets formatted to a different the available channels behind the scenes. I think it's a first step, and they're going to be more and more of these abstraction layers. Actually, in marketing automation software, you have some of that use cases where you email and push and messaging with different flavors can also be adapted and abstracted. And there's company raised over $100 million each in marketing automation platform to replace Marketos of the world. I think this is happening also from that angle. That being said, my hope is in 10 years from now, you're going to have a concentration again, and maybe 2 or 3 channel will win versus the 50 that we have today. And I think it's similar that happened with the diversity of phone devices, right? 20 years ago, you had 50 different platforms, and you had to render the application to each of these platforms. And 20 years later, you have 2 platforms, Android and iPhone. That could be a potential future for messaging.
For most of them, person to person is the primary application, and A2P and B2C is secondary. And when you're in a world where P2P is the primary use case, differentiation and fragmentation makes lots of sense, because people are very different and have the different preferences and behaviors. And there's very few people who would like to have lowest common denominator between messaging on, I don't know, LinkedIn and Tinder, for example, or an airline. Yeah, they're all very, very different use cases, and certainly lowest common denominator probably shouldn't apply.
exactly, I'm just thinking, you get United Alert on Tinder. I think that there will be, So I think that we'll see a subset there rather than it being universal, because I think within peer-to-peer there has to be a host of differentiation, otherwise it's not sticky. But for the application to person, I think it's finding that subset that's good enough. Because again, you're never going to get 100% penetration with messaging. It's always, can we get at least into the 90s? And that's the key.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the Wild West in a sense where, like you have to create your own algorithms and understand what mobile carrier providers are doing, getting in the way of you and communicating with your customers, or your customer their customers. Because, if you send out a blast message to all of your customers using your company telephone number, they're not all going to go through. Like, the percentage is very low on what's going to get caught through because of the mobile carrier filters. But if you stay one step ahead and legitimate, trying to get your message to your customer, there's a lot of different ways to do that. That you get those messages with a very high success rate. But I think that's like what we're all really kind of have to deal with in that type of space, overcoming other people's limitations.
Yeah.
Which, you know, blockchain. Anyone's talked about that here yet, but I mean, one of the other companies that I have going right now that we're working on is a lot of the blockchain space, where, you know, you can verify messages, you can verify calls that are being made, you can verify call porting that's happening. And to me, that's like, there's a lot of problems to be solved that's never been solved in that space, where you can use blockchain for something good. I can go to any town in America and spend about an hour researching the infrastructure there, and spend about 5 minutes writing up a script that I'm not even a developer, and I could take down the entire 911 for that entire state. That shouldn't like happen. You shouldn't be able to do that. And so, I mean, when you look at these things, you got to look at like the obstacles that you're trying to get past, and creative and getting past them with good intent.
Great, thanks. Now, again, any questions from the audience? We've got a great panel here. This is a unique mix. Just want to wrap up then, if we're
You know, Alan, on that last part, you know, it's really for messaging, it's what Chris had mentioned, just the whole panel up here, it's the success rate. That's the part that eats at and causes the most angst for everybody that I talked about SMS. How do I get the data back from the carrier that says it went through? Of course, the IO message for Apple's Messenger and all the different chats, they have it because they're going over their own private, and they're doing it that way. But the big thing for me, the common denominator for me that would make SMS, or what I do in CPaaS world better, is I could have more reliability to the deliverability of that message and be told why. I can't tell you how many hours we do at every of the customer, all the places that I've worked trying to chase that down. We can eventually get it, but it's not easy.
Well, Tony did a lot of that.
Talk to Nexmo about that. Maybe they'll give you some insight.
Direct carrier deals.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So let's just wrap up on the last question. So this is longer term, looking into the future with CPaaS. Is this business going to get swallowed up by the big cloud providers, Amazon, Google, perhaps even Microsoft? Please, any views, just chip in.
All right, I'll jump in. The bottom line is they're all going to add and bite and taste and do it, but they're not going to go at it wholeheartedly. So you're not going to have the right customer interaction. They're going to provide it. I mean, the beauty for me for Google is the fact that they'll go buy something that's proprietary and then they'll open source it, which is crazy to most businessmen, but I've seen them do it time and time again. So at the end of the day, to get that concierge service and to make sure that you have the dedication, the private cloud that Terry talked about is exactly that point. You're always going to need that. So they're not going to provide it. They do have some things, so they got better HIPAA and they got better government and all that. They've added those bits and pieces, but it's not thorough. It's not going to cover the edge cases.
There is no doubt that they're going to get into it. For the main reason is that they are really betting on the B2B cloud infrastructure and services space. It's becoming an ever more important revenue stream for them, especially Amazon and Microsoft. And they need to diversify. They need to go up in the stack from pure storage and computing to higher value-added services. And programmable communication is definitely one area that they want to go into. And actually, they're already in it. Amazon has Amazon Connect, which is one of the main disruptive contact center offering.
Yep.
It's pretty cool, actually. They have Amazon Pinpoint, which is kind of a messaging orchestration layer over email, push, and SMS. And Google actually have an internal team that is probably as big as Nexmo, that is just managing carrier relation, and they have internal APIs. So for them, it's really a matter of opening this up to the public and merging it with their cloud B2B division. So yeah, I mean, they are definitely coming, and some of them are already doing it.
Exactly. Christopher?
I think it's all going to come down to really like culture in the end, because I think there's going to be a big shift in that as things are moving forward. But there's always going to be a David and Goliath, an optimist, and I always want on the side, David.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's always been on the investment side, on the investment community. Everybody has been saying Amazon will eventually buy Twilio. That rumor's been out there for a long time. But if you look at it, Twilio trades at 15, depending on the day, 15 to 20x revenues, and that is very rich. It's going to be very difficult for any public company to buy that kind of multiple.
They could buy Nexmo instead.
They could buy that Nexmo, yeah, or Kaleyra, for that matter. But I think the point is, yes, there's definitely going to be more consolidation. I think if you take a Silicon Valley view, telecom has been a horrible place to invest. So, everybody in Silicon Valley, I would say most of them did not believe in Twilio, right? They did not believe Twilio, and it's just really ironic. Twilio was the first company come out of Silicon Valley to break the drought of IPO in 2016, when all of Silicon Valley, I mean, if you pitch a telecom-related company there, you would know they just don't believe in it. So I think it's really interesting. I think from the investment market perspective, the CPaaS companies are very richly value right now, and that makes it difficult for other companies to buy it. The other thing I would point out is for the UCaaS and CPaaS companies, it's not a natural fit because the sales and marketing channels are all different. The implementation is all different. There's really no synergy between UCaaS and CPaaS companies, even though there's only like one letter difference, right? So I think at the end of the day, you got to look at the basic foundations, and there's no question. I think a lot of the consolidation, I believe, will be more geographically motivated.
Yeah, no, that's
Because
a good point.
yeah, for any cloud company to be global, it's not really, it's not a good starting point. But I think more consolidation will be more geographically motivated.
Sorry, Terry, because we're coming up on time, I just want to squeeze one last question in. So Dinesh.
Yeah, quick question, I think, because Apogee was acquired by Google a couple of years back. I'd like to get some feedback on how was that integration and how did they kind of bring some of those CPaaS things through Google to the market?
Well,
So Apogee was an API management platform. So especially actually a lot of telcos had their APIs management on Apogee, running on Apogee, but didn't really offer any CPaaS enterprise services. So there was really no opportunity for Google to go into that market, the same market that Twilio and Nexmo are on.
exactly. It was BS. Again, back to my Bay Area bullshit. And I actually have a weblog written where I was explaining how Apogee was not a CPaaS, and I got very irate emails telling me I was completely wrong and I needed to travel over to the Bay Area to be learned on how I was wrong. And thank you, Tony, for backing up. It's API management. Oh.
One question. I said one question when you're done. One last question, hopefully.
Okay, go on. We'll squeeze it in. Oh, you got the? Oh, you got it? Good, go for it.
So this morning you guys talked about the telcos as inhibitor to this space, and you just mentioned investors are not keen on the space. So what can we take away from bandwidth.com and what they've been able to do as a traditional telco moving into this space and have a similar multiple to Twilio?
Yeah, Bandwidth is, I call them a genius, right? Because they're very far from a CPaaS player. They're US market only. 93% of their revenue is on voice and CLAC services. And what they did, they obviously don't trade at that multiple, but they're certainly, close, they're way above a telecom company multiple, not quite at the Twilio level multiple, but what they did was they make their financial statements exactly like Twilio's. Obviously, the numbers are different, but they dress themselves up like a CPaaS through the lens of the financial statements, not through the market.
And great analyst relations as well.
And they also like outsource most of their stuff at the beginning. So like someone else built their portal. Keep that in mind when you guys are doing something, you're building something. You need to outsource something, outsource it, but make sure you can control it, maintain the build, and there's integrity in it. But Bandwidth is a great company. It's kind of in this scenario where Twilio was their customer. They fired their customer, and now they're competing with their customer. So.
Actually, putting Bandwidth aside, which I agree with Terry, is more kind of a repackaging financial exercise. I think software-enabled communication is hot right now in the market. You have Zoom, amazing IPO, Twilio, you have Vonage, you have RingCentral, all kind of highly valued companies out there. And for good reasons. They have high quality revenue, high gross margin, relatively high growth. I mean, RingCentral growing at 30% a year, Twilio at over 50, Nexmo CPaaS of Vonage has been growing at 49% last quarter. So these are very good numbers today, high quality revenue for Wall Street. So communication enabled software is back in the game when it comes to public market perception.
Okay, so with that, let's show appreciation for an excellent panel. Thank you so much.